Senator Jim Talent is retired from the United States Senate, still active in all matters national security and good governance from the Bipartisan Policy Center in Washington, D.C. Good morning, Jim. How are you?
I'm fine, Hugh, and
Let's.
I am a non-presidential candidate on your show, and always
There
happy
you
to
go.
be
But
here.
you comment on them. So I was talking with Admiral Stav about Mr. Ramaswamy not knowing what the nuclear triad is. I'm not down on him. I'm just thinking it's a generational issue. If you grow up in the world of the Cold War, you see movies, you read books, you can't avoid Time magazine, you know what mutual assured destruction is, and you know what nuclear strategy is. I just don't think people do anymore if they're, grew up after the Cold War. What do you think?
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think if this had been 25 years ago, a well-read person in his position would at least know what it is. I mean, he might not be able to tell you exactly what it entails or why we have all three legs of the triad, but he'd know what it is. And he didn't, I mean, he didn't recognize the term. So
And
yeah,
he was
he's going to
humble
have to
about
be,
it. I love that. He said, "Teach us."
yeah.
I'm going to find. Get me brief. I'm going to send him to you as one of the people he ought to talk to get a briefing, and Jerry Hendricks, et cetera. Because I mean, you give time to candidates who want to get smart, don't you?
Oh, all the time, but particularly on defense issues. But I will say this, you, and this is more your area than mine. His comms people slipped up because they should have said to him, "Look, you're going on the UUIT show. So there are some things you need to read up a little bit about. You're going to get some questions about foreign policy and national security policy," and they clearly didn't. I'll tell you a
And
little
Alger
secret.
Hiss and the looming tower. Yeah, they
When
didn't. They
Eric
didn't do a good
when Eric
brief.
when Eric Schmidt was running for the Senate, his comms guy called me and said he's going on UUIT, and I said he better read a few things. I gave him some hints.
Well, he was good. He was very well prepared. Senator,
Yeah, he
now let's
was.
turn to the China hearing that was Tuesday night. It's a great
Yeah,
start. Did you see it?
yeah.
What did you think about it? How do they improve on their game?
Well, they explored all different parts of the threat that China presents. And this is one thing that Mike Gallagher understands. You have to explain the why. Right up front, you have to explain why this matters, okay? Because if the Chinese achieve their foreign policy goals, they are going to exercise the power of a sovereign in the Western Pacific and then beyond. So they're going to tell us, you want to trade with Vietnam? You got to pay us in order to be able to do it. You want to sail your ships in the South China Sea? You got to do what we want you to do. You're criticizing what we're doing in Xinjiang province. We're going to slap tariffs on you, and if you come back, we're going to punish you. You can't have your alliance with Japan. They want to replace the world order with one where they're at the top, and we are one of their vassals. And I think he went through that in a lot of different areas. And I agree with what he said. I thought the Democrats were very constructive, and he has some really good people in there. Seth Moulton, I mean, I've known for a long time. And so it's a good committee. They're going to do great work.
When he got a Democrat congressman to go with him to New York to the secret Chinese Communist Party police station, and that guy's a progressive lefty, that
Yeah.
shows me that this committee might actually do what committees like the Kefauver Committee and the Church Committee did, and indeed the Watergate Committee. Bipartisan, good faith effort to get to the bottom of the threat.
Yeah, there's a very strong bipartisan coalition in the Congress that understands the danger China presents. They emphasize different aspects. You notice he mentioned the Democrats talk mostly about the economic aspect of this. The Republicans were more on the security. And I think one of the reasons I encountered this a couple years ago when I testified before the Senate, there's a lot of members and senators who stuck their necks out year after year after year in order to support policies like letting China into the World Trade Organization. And they did it because the Chinese made commitments, and the Chinese talked a lot about liberalizing, and then they pulled the rug out from under everybody. So I think there's a lot of people who are not going to let them play, Charlie Brown in the football and Lucy in the football and Charlie Brown again. I
Now,
almost
Senator
missed.
Talent, I was just
I
talking
almost
with
missed.
Admiral Stav about Russia
Yeah,
and the fact that they've lost another tank battle. So we've got a
yeah.
minute for you to tell us how this is going to end.
Well, my anticipation was that the most likely result this year would be a battlefield that was pretty stalemated because the Russians had prepared defenses in depth, and they had a commander who was good at that. And then Putin replaced him in January with Gerasimov, who is more offensive minded. So it's clear that he made promises to Putin. Listen, I can retake territory in the Donbass, and I think They're trying to do it because it's Putin's priority, but they can't do maneuver warfare. They couldn't at the beginning of the war when they had trained troops, when they had enough kit, when their morale was at least not where it is now. And Stab is exactly, even I know, you can't send armor out by itself. It's liable to counterattack by infantrymen with Stinger missiles. And that's exactly what happened. So I think he's right. It's evidence they haven't learned to this point.
Not yet. They're not a learning machine, unlike China, which is, and Xi Jinping. Jim Talent on Twitter with the Bipartisan Policy Center. Always good to see you, Senator. Thank you for joining me.